Hey there. My name's Luke, and welcome back to the show. Sorry it's been a little bit of time, but there's some days where there's no reason to be talking to you, and I'm trying to see if I can do more videos for you that aren't just slop to watch. I mean, something genuine. And I try to make sure that when I'm speaking to you, I've got something new and something different to say. The reality is that I don't have something to tell you every day. And quite honestly, I'm the same person. I'm not a different person. I'm not interviewing anyone. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to myself. Which means that I'm going to say some of the same stuff over and over with some variance day to day. And I made it a point to myself when I first started making these videos is that I would just make one video a day when I'm driving home. Occasionally, maybe during lunch, I'd talk for 10 minutes, and then maybe in the morning, if I'm feeling frisky, I would say something that I came up with the night before. But I'm starting to realize that, chasing an idea or a video title and trying to really attempt to do it all the time, it was starting to be just annoying. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun making those videos, but there's a time and place for them, and now I have a different obsession. There's a time where I was trying to script it out. I was trying to go over talking points and research topics for you, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to get back to that at some point, but right now I've been focusing on photography, and I think that when I get home today, I'll actually show you some of the photos I've taken. But I've started to realize with my photography is that the camera isn't necessarily the threshold for a good quality picture. It really comes down to luck and skill. And if you have more skill, you have more luck. But if you have more luck, you just have luck. That's about it. Now, with the exposure triangle, you have aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, as well as exposure, which can be pulled a little bit here and there in editing. But I've started to realize that over-editing photos just makes them look disgusting. Composition is very difficult because in the state of Florida where I live, and in St. Cloud where I am, there ain't a lot of interesting, cool stuff around that is like beautiful, gorgeous, and everything. It's hard to find. And maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, or maybe I've just been here way too long and I've started to just not enjoy it here because I've seen everything here. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of close-ups to get. A close-up of a flower, a close-up of a lizard or a rabbit or a baby ducks or something. Like, there's always that possibility. But I've started to realize that there's not a lot of biodiversity here. When you really start taking photos of everything, we're starting to run out of biodiversity. And that's really fascinating to me. There's only a certain amount of things that grow here, and a certain amount of things that are even slightly interesting to the eye. And they're good close up, but then far away, they're just kind of okay. And then the lighting has to be perfect, and maybe it's got to be done during the golden hour, and you've got to have multiple subjects in the photo. And I've started to realize that composition is going to take a very long time for me to get precisely. And I think that I'm going to have to start traveling further and further distances to achieve what I'm looking for. Because the reality is that photos are not just easy to come by. And now I understand why so many people move to New York just for photography and street photography. That is the place for it. And it depends on where you are. Right now where I live, there's not a lot of street photography. There's not a lot of nature. It's all suburbs, and that's not really interesting either. I've started to pick up on all that. But I'm trying to branch out. I'm trying to find that photo wherever I am. And I think that it's helped me as a photographer, because the one thing I have realized is that you have to keep combing over an area. over and over, even if you're trying to take the same picture again, trying different composition on a different day will warrant different results. You'll get a different photo completely. You will get an entirely different photo. You may edit it a little bit differently on a different day, the way you're feeling that day. And I think that's very powerful. So, if you're learning as a photographer, I think it's very important that you comb over the same area over and over again. There's a beautiful place next to my work. It's called Peghorn Park, and it is a bunch of flowers and a bunch of plants and a bunch of lizards and sandhill cranes and stuff like that, and a bunch of ducks here and there. There's a lot of space there. It's a nature walk, but it's also a garden that's maintained by the schools nearby, and also other clubs and such. So there's a lot of biodiversity there that you're able to work with, and a lot of insects and a lot of wildlife and vegetation that you're able to work with. There's also dog collars there with people's dogs that were service dogs, and they passed away, and they put their collars there as kind of like a remembrance. It has like a creek that flows through, and I think that's beautiful. I really do, and I got a lot of pictures of those because I think that's amazing. And I know now that I've been there so many times, and I've seen so many different things. And just recently, I just switched my path a little bit, and I was able to capture so much more. I really enjoy green. I really enjoy capturing leaves, because the reality is that not everything is a flower. Not everything is some beautiful colored thing. Sometimes it's just playing with the shadows of the day and the night, and how the light's hitting the foliage, and how the green has a little bit of the sun on it, and then the rest is in shadow, and being able to play with that in Lightroom and getting the colors right. A lot of that is more prominent than a typical flower, and it means that you have to make that green slightly interesting. It takes work. You have to edit it right. You have to compose it right. You have to use the right aperture and the right focal length. Like, it really does take a second to get something perfect. And it really does come down to an art form to make something interesting out of nothing. And I've always had that. I've always used my phone for photography and all these different things. And I've started to realize how much beauty is in the world, that we're just not seeing day to day, that you really have to look for. And I think that's beautiful. I really do. I also have noticed, finally, the quality difference between my phone camera and my actual camera. Now you'll start to realize that the quality of the photo from the phone camera is amazing. The density of pixels and everything like that. However, when it comes time to the color science, the detail of color, and also the shadows with the dark and the light and how that affects each other, that's where you start to realize that your phone has limitations in comparison to a full-frame camera. And I'm really glad that I was able to find that, because when I first got this camera, I wasn't noticing those differences, and I was noticing that my autofocus was really bad. You have to really play with your autofocus settings to get it right. I mean, even with a perfect camera, shooting in auto, everything, your autofocus needs to be fine-tuned. And you need to understand how it works. And when you're just first getting your camera, you have no concept of how that autofocus is working and where you need that focus at. And then also you have to deal with the aperture, how much of the photo you want in focus. And I'm starting to realize what's more with that exposure triangle. And I'm trying to compose a rule of thumb for myself, shoot in manual a little bit more, aperture priority, and make sure that I'm hitting the right f-stop and the right, like f11 or whatever, for a consistent, clean, beautiful canvas, I guess you could say. Make sure everything's in focus. And that means, you've got to really nail that shutter speed and potentially have a flash. And I'm starting to get into having a flash in my camera and, getting different gear, more memory cards, different cameras, different lenses. And I'm starting to get an addiction to it and an obsession. And I love that because it's a hobby. And I've gotten some positive feedback, and I'm pretty happy about that. I'm pretty proud of that. But I understand that I'm nowhere near where I need to be. And it's going to take a lot of video skills and a lot of Instagram shorts to be made before that even really is interesting. You know what I mean? I'm starting to realize that, it's not everything to do that. You need more. You really do. And, yeah. Now, you'll see in my videos coming up, I've come a long way with my photos. First of all, I started out with my phone, and I was just taking photos of stuff. And then it went into selfies, and then from there, I actually started taking raw photos and editing them in my phone, and then I realized that I was being limited there. And I decided that I was going to get a full-frame camera. The reason is because I went through a time in my life where I was feeling a little bit lost, and I was not doing anything in my spare time. I needed a secondary hobby. I needed something that mattered outside of just, going out at night. I needed more. I need fulfillment, And fulfillment does come from my photography, because I made these videos as a journal to, see where my mind was at every day, and log myself, for my mental health, for just getting my thoughts out of my head so I can go to sleep at night feeling comfortable that, whatever thoughts I had wasn't getting lost. And maybe you'll find that therapeutic if you ever try it. But also with, just being able to express myself and having a creative mindset, talking about something, anything, trying to learn communication skills and trying to be able to talk better to people. I mean, if you can talk to yourself for 20 minutes, you can definitely talk to somebody for 5. So that was really the purpose behind this. And I also wanted it an outlet for potentially making money, and also potentially being able to, go more into depth with it and really create like videos from it. And I'm trying to do that pretty soon. So, I'm really excited to see where I go with this and how I compose the next upcoming videos. Maybe I'll go home right now and start doing that. That being said, with my photography, what I have noticed is composition is very difficult. It's not just look at subject, take picture of subject. Are they centered? Are they off to the bottom, middle, or around that little rule of thirds? No, it has to be more than that. And when you start incorporating multiple elements into the photo, your f-stop, has to be really good. And on top of that, it's got to be sharp glass, and it's got to be good quality, perfect ISO, perfect lighting conditions, and you have to have the perfect conditions for things to line up, and you've got to tell a story. And I'm starting to realize how important that story is for a photo. It can't just be, wow. It has to be, oh, I get it. Because the reality of nowadays is that everyone's watching videos. They're not taking pictures anymore. No one cares. You have to create a video that matters. So I'm going to start to try to do that. I'm going to start trying to create videos on the photography that I do, and I'm very excited for that in the future. But what's going on in my brain, I guess. I'm just living life right now, honestly. I'm just doing my job. I got out of work early today, so that was pretty cool. And I'm just relaxing. Go home, try to do some videos for you. And yeah, trying to make small changes every day with everything that I do. That's pretty much it. I'm getting better at talking to people. I really am. I'm becoming more social, but also I really do think that maybe it's not just me, or maybe I'm delusional, but I really do think that social media has a hierarchy to it. The people you know, the people that you know that talk about you behind your back, for better, for worse, all of these things add up. There's a ledger for what you do and who you interact with. You shouldn't just be thinking about your job. You should be thinking about your friends and coworkers around your job that surround you. I think it's very important that you have a network of people, whether they're friends or acquaintances, that are through social media, through your phone number, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, to keep in contact with these people. Because the best way to foster a good relationship is first to actually let the other person know that you care about them slightly, at least, and they're not useless to you, and you matter to them, and you spend time with them, and you make sure to spend time with them whether that's in person or not. But on top of that, you want to make sure that you're up to date with them. And to stay up to date with someone and not have to constantly text them every day like your toxic ex is, check their social media, like their message or whatever. And that little bit of dopamine kick that someone gets from that will, it'll enforce that behavior, ensure that you are at least in the back of their brain at all times. You're right there with them, where if you felt the need that you needed to hang out with them the next day, it would be fine because you have been communicating this whole time. Now, you've been texting each other good morning and good night every day, but you've liked each other's posts. Maybe you sent a reel between each other a couple times, and that's staying in contact, And then hopefully, maybe once a month at least, you meet up with this person outside of work or whatever, and you hang out with them. You make sure that friendship is still strong, that bond is still there, you still experience things together. And as long as you do that, you've got a decent relationship right there. I think another important part of a relationship is communication, and people say that all the time, but what I'm speaking on specifically is conflict resolution. The reality is that there's going to be problems that arise no matter what you do with someone else, whether that's a relationship, a friendship, an acquaintanceship, co-workers, etc. You need to be able to communicate with these people without raising your voice, without getting pissed off, without punching them. But if any of those things happen, and if you do get into any arguments, you need to resolve that conflict and not just give up on it, not just say, you're right. I mean, honestly, get through that and change that from a conflict and resolving it completely. Hugging it out, kiss it out, handshake it out, dap it up, I don't know, but you have to resolve that issue between that person. You can't just ignore them, you can't just ghost them. Truly resolving that conflict with someone is how you foster a strong relationship. Because the inevitability of every friendship or relationship is you're going to go through hardships together. Now, are you going to get through those together and your relationship will become stronger for it? Or will you burn each other until one of you gives and, someone crashes out on someone else? Not ideal. That's the important part behind this. You've got to be able to talk to somebody. Talk to that person and really figure it out. The tree fell. Jeez. But if I have one thing to take away from this is that you got to get out of your head and you got to start talking to people a little bit more and get out of your comfort zone Stop being to yourself all the time. And I'm talking to you because I'm talking to myself. I'm a little bit to myself a lot, so I'm trying to get out of my shell more. I'm trying to communicate with people. I'm trying to be part of the cool kids group. And, life is a popularity contest, and anyone who says it isn't is lying to you. You've got to be able to communicate with people. You've got to be able to be part of groups and also connect with people individually. That's a photographer's perspective, I guess. Anyways, I'll catch you later. See ya.